Welcome to this presentation on bringing joy to practice. This is a supplemental presentation as part of the White Pine Institute Graduate Mentorship Program. In order to bring joy to our practices of Chinese medicine, and really in order to bring joy to our lives in general, we have to first understand the nature of suffering and the fact of our own suffering. For this, let's look at the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. The first noble truth is dukkha, the truth of suffering. And this means really looking at the fact that we do suffer, looking it straight in the eye. What is it that happens for us that makes us suffer in our practices of Chinese medicine? Then there's samudaya, the truth of the cause of suffering. What is the cause of this? Why are we suffering? Then nirodha, the truth of the end of suffering, that there is a possibility of ending that suffering. And magga, the truth of the path, that there is a path that ends suffering. So that's what we'll be looking at in this presentation in relation to our practices of Chinese medicine. From a Buddhist point of view, when we're suffering, we're living in samsara. Samsara is characterized by suffering. The meaning of samsara is continuous movement, and it's associated with cyclic existence, and also with this continuous cycle of birth and death, that we're born into samsara, and we live, and then we die, and then we're reborn into samsara, one rebirth after another. We're going to be looking at this a little bit differently than it's typically looked at, and looking at it specifically in relation to our practices of Chinese medicine. This continuous cycle that we get caught in, this continuous movement of samsara. We want to understand that the samsara, the suffering, is caused by grasping and fixating. We're going to look at that in a little bit of a different way than you might usually think about it from a Buddhist point of view as well. But now let's just keep in mind that samsara is living in suffering, and that it has this continuous cyclic movement to it. So let's look at this in terms of what actually happens in our practice. So these concepts are not so obscure. So I'm in my practice, and perhaps a complex patient walks in, and I feel overwhelmed, and I brace myself up to put up a good front, and maybe I give less than a good treatment just to get out of there. That makes me feel guilty. So I don't charge as much as I need. Then I feel deprived, so I eat a pint of ice cream. Then I feel guilty again, and then I vow to study more and sign up for a course. But I get overwhelmed about which course to sign up for, and I pick one that I'm not really interested in, but I think I should take. And then I fall behind. I have more complex patients. I brace myself and put up a good front. I think about finding a new career. I tell myself it's not that bad, and I decide I need to change my schedule so I can study more. So let's just call this cyclic existence, because these kinds of things go around and around and around. And let's also look at the cause of these things. There are thoughts that come in, and they cause us to act. Like a thought comes in, so I brace myself up, or I don't charge as much, or I decide I need to take a course. So let's just take a minute to look at what happens in the clinic, and then the thoughts that come up. So a complex patient walks in, and I hear a voice, "You're in over your head." So I brace myself up. "Oh, you're such a fake." Then I give a less than adequate treatment. "You are a schmuck." Feel guilty. And then I hear, "You don't deserve to charge for this." So I don't charge as much as I need, and I hear, "You don't even make enough money." I feel deprived, and I hear the thought, "Now you're feeling sorry for yourself." When I eat a pint of ice cream, "What a pig." Then I feel guilty, and I hear, "Now you're feeling sorry for yourself again." I decide that I need to sign up for a course. "Oh, you've got to improve yourself." I get overwhelmed. You can never decide on anything. Then I pick one I'm not really interested in. This is going to suck. And then I fall behind in the course. And I hear, see, you never should have taken this. Waste of money you don't have. And then I have more complex patients. You are so not cut out for this. I brace myself up and put on a good front. You're such a fraud. I think about finding a new career. What a waste of your investment. I tell myself it's not that bad. Yeah, you always make everything so dramatic. I decide I need to change my schedule so I can study more. Yeah, come on, pull it together and make a plan. So what we can see from this is that there are a barrage of these kinds of voices, and each of the actions we take is an effort to appease these negative voices that go on sometimes unconsciously. And this is the wheel of suffering. This is samsara, the cyclic existence that repeats and repeats. We're constantly reborn into various painful worlds, complete with a past, a future, people, emotions, physical experience. And this is suffering, the truth of suffering, and the cause of suffering. But what are these voices? Where do they come from? How do we understand them, what they do to us? These voices can be really sneaky, like coming in and saying, I'm such a mess. I'm too hard on myself. I should be able to ignore these voices. Ugh. Let's take a moment now to shift our focus a little bit and just imagine the person who is hearing these voices. Here I've sort of found a picture that's like my younger self, because I actually feel very young when I am driven by these voices. And just think about this person that you are in your own situation, your own voices and your own actions to appease these voices, and connect with that person who's hearing this and just see, like, what a harsh world to live in. This is suffering. It goes on and on, around and around. And who is this person who's hearing these voices? And just take a moment to connect with that person. Now, in order to really connect to the way that we suffer in our practices, it's important to get very specific. So I'd like now for you to consider a difficult clinical situation, a very specific clinical situation that maybe happened this past week or in the last month or any time, just as long as you can really connect with how you suffered in that clinical situation. So in this situation that you've chosen, where are you? Just sort of look at your surroundings, your treatment room, your waiting room, or you're on the phone with somebody. You're in this difficult situation, and just go very specific of where you are in this situation. Who are you with? See the room and the person, and then connect with the thought that comes up. You know, maybe it's a very complex patient who's not getting better, and you have a thought that I'm failing this patient. Could be other thoughts like I'm a fraud, or my income depends on me being successful with this patient and I'm failing, I'm going to be poor. We have a whole variety of thoughts that come in these kinds of situations. So really consider this situation. You're sitting with a person, a patient, and what is the thought that comes up that is causing a lot of suffering? If you want to just pause this slide so you can feel into it. This part of this presentation is really a meditation, and it's important to really connect with your own situation. Okay, so now we're going to take the thought, I'm failing this patient. You can put in your own suffering thought. This is a very common one. Now, how do you react when you have this thought? Where do you feel it in your body? How do you feel that in your body? How does it feel to be with your patient when you have this thought, I'm failing this patient? What images or thoughts come about the past? What images or thoughts come that are about the future? When you have this thought, I'm failing this patient, how do you feel about studying? What kinds of issues come up about studying? Now again, I encourage you to pause this presentation and really put yourself into this situation in your clinic with this patient and feel how it feels when you have this thought that I'm failing this patient, and really connect to it. Maybe even write down some notes about where you feel it in your body. Is it upward feelings, downward feelings, both, caving in feelings, pressure feelings? How it feels to be with your patient when you have this thought. What happens to your connection when you have the thought that you're failing this patient? Images or thoughts about the past, what's happened before that feels like evidence that you are failing, and about the future, like that my practice is going to fail, or what you need to do, plans about the future, about taking courses or studying more, or changing my schedule, or things like that, and what your relationship to studying is. If you're in the graduate mentorship program, when you have these kinds of thoughts, how do you feel about the program? And just take some time with this. The more time you can take, the better. Now that you've connected to how much suffering is caused when you believe this thought that you're failing the patient, you really can feel that in your body and see the sort of fallout from a thought like that. Let's now go back to this situation, and this is really a meditation. It can be really difficult for people, but imagine that in this situation with this particular patient, you are not able to have this thought, that it's impossible for you to have this thought. So you're sitting in your clinic, you're with this patient, talking about her symptoms, she's expressing her pain, and it's impossible for you to have a thought that you're such a failure. And just feel into what would that situation be with that patient if it was impossible for you to have the thought that you're such a failure, and feel into what that would feel like. Who would you be without that thought? How do you feel in your body without that thought? Without the thought, how does your relationship with your patient change? What happens to your relationship to your resources without the thought? How does the past feel without the thought? Are you even thinking about the past or the future when you don't have that thought? How do you feel about studying when you don't have that thought? And really take some time with this. So often people feel relaxed and more connected, more in the present moment. Resources become available. Study starts to become fun. You feel more connected to your patient when those thoughts are not there. And let's just call this state of being, this open state of being, your true nature. So if this is my true nature, this sort of relaxed, open, present, connected person, if this is my true nature, then what are these voices? If they're not my true nature, that means they're actually not me. That these voices aren't actually coming from me, from my source, from my essence. This is really important because we actually believe that these thoughts are my thoughts, but they aren't my thoughts. They aren't coming from my actual true nature. So let's take this a step further and just say you're there being open and connected to your patient, and this nasty neighbor comes in and says, "You really suck at this." Another neighbor comes in and says, "Wow, you really don't know what you're doing." That's what these thoughts are like. When we see that they aren't coming from us, we can see them as such an intrusion, such an invasion into a space that is actually a sacred space. Because in this space, we're connected with our true nature. And our true nature is creative and connected to our resources and connected to our patient. So we could say that that's a sacred space, and then these thoughts come in, and we can see that they're very invasive and cruel and completely unconstructive. And yet, we take them for granted that they're just true because it appears that they're coming from us. When we're in reaction to these thoughts and they're driving us around, making us not charge for our time, or upsetting us so much we eat a pint of ice cream, or upsetting us so much we vow to take a course and change our schedule, and we're sort of driven around and around by these thoughts. That is the wheel of samsara. That is cyclic existence. And it goes around and around and around, and we're all familiar with this in our practices and in general in our lives, this quality of cyclic existence. So then, how do we get off this wheel of samsara? What do we do to get off the wheel of samsara? So we have all these voices, and they run us around doing all this stuff to appease them. Let's just now ask the question, who is it that's hearing these voices? And just shift our focus and see ourselves there as the person who is hearing these voices and has been hearing them for a very, very long time. And just take a moment to really feel who that person is and what his or her situation. When you differentiate from this person or disidentify from him or her, so it's as if you're looking at this person in the treatment room who's got all these voices harassing her. How do you feel about him or her? And who is this person for you? Okay, so we have all of this suffering, all these voices. And then we've asked the question, who is it that's hearing these voices? This person that's hearing these voices. And we can really take some time to connect with her or him, as the case may be. Just really connect with her and just ask this question. What's it like for her to be living in this world of samsara? What's it like to hear all these voices all the time? How do we feel about her? Can we find a sense of affection? And can we look at her and see, like, wow, she tries so hard. She's so sincere. And yet she's beat up by these voices all the time. And just take a moment and feel what happens in your heart when you connect with this person. Just feel what happens in your body when you connect with this person who's been hearing all these voices for so long. So another question is, who is it that's caring about this person? Who feels this affection for her? Who is it that brings this warmth? And again, this is a meditation, so feel it in your body. There's this warmth and affection for this person that we've disidentified with. We're looking at her and really seeing the way that she's suffered, and then asking, okay, I feel this warmth for her. Who is it that's feeling that warmth? Realizing that's me that's feeling that warmth. Let's also say that this warmth is your true nature. That when I feel this towards myself, I'm connecting with my own true nature. My own true nature is warm and loving and compassionate. And when I see this person who's been suffering, I can connect with this warmth, with this love. And this is who I am when I step off the wheel of samsara, the wheel of cyclic existence. So here what we notice is that we can't actually fight these voices. These voices have a life of their own. They're just there. We could call them conditioning. We can also see that they are not generated from us. They're just around because of conditioning, because of situations and circumstances that have happened outside of us. But they come in and harass us. And if we react to them, trying to appease them or fight with them, then we immediately get swept into the wheel of cyclic existence, the wheel of samsara. However, if we can turn our attention in a different direction, which is toward the person who's suffering because of these voices, and connect with that person with warmth, we immediately have a direct experience of our true nature, of our loving nature. And we could say that that's our true nature. And we can feel that when we connect that way, the voices lose their power. So it's not a matter of directly resisting the voices or fighting with the voices or trying to shut them out. It's a matter of where we place our attention. And if we place our attention to loving this person that we are, really connecting with affection for this person we are, and wanting to protect her and this sacred place from these voices, when we connect with that love, immediately the voices get much quieter, and there's something that happens in our bodies and our beings where a kind of warmth develops. And from that open, relaxed, warm place, when we're working in our practices, we bring a lot of generosity, a lot of connection to our patients, a lot of relaxation, and that warmth is transmitted to our various circumstances in our practices. So, to summarize what we have talked about in this presentation, the negative thoughts are not me. They are a nasty neighbor. They're outside of me. They come into my sacred place, my sacred space, and they disrupt it. They don't come from me. It's possible to know who we are without these thoughts. This is so important, to take time to connect with who we are and rest in that. Who are we without those thoughts? Because that's our true nature. Open, relaxed, connected. These negative thoughts are the doorway to step off the wheel of samsara. They are the link to the one who is experiencing the thought. So this means that the negative thoughts are not really a problem. They are what wake us up to the possibility of turning our attention to the one who is experiencing the thought. So they're kind of like a beacon. When we notice them and see them for what they are, we can use them as a motivation to turn our attention toward this person that we care about so much, ourselves. We can see that without the negative thought, we come into the present. the past and the future fade, our curiosity dawns, our resources become available, we are able to care. We want to study, not because we're compensating for what failures we are, but because it's interesting and helpful and fun. We connect to this person who we like, who cares, who's smart, and who has resources. We connect with our own warmth, which is our true nature. So as we've gone through this presentation, for me, a profound truth is revealed. And this is that our acupuncture and herbal practices are there to heal us. The purpose is not to heal others. What a revolutionary thought, huh? As we work to heal our unconscious attachment to cyclic existence, caring for and healing others is the natural and unavoidable result. If we focus on healing others, we will be unhappy and drain ourselves. Healing ourselves means connecting with our true nature, which is warm and loving. When we allow our true nature to embrace our suffering self and allow our suffering self to be touched by our true nature, we're healed. And we are then able to be amazing practitioners in a way that's joyful and fun. This is so important. It's so important to know that our gifts as healers are natural. They come from us spontaneously. Our generosity, our creativity, our curiosity, our compassion, all come from us naturally when we are connected to our true nature. So our entire practice of acupuncture and herbal medicine is to be focused on healing ourselves. And what that means is noticing these thoughts that come in and intrude on our sacred space, and letting those thoughts ignite a compassion for ourselves, turning from those thoughts toward ourselves, the selves that have been suffering, and holding that part of ourselves with a lot of compassion and love, affection, really liking ourselves. When we do that, the more we do that, the more we are able to give our patience, and our practices become joyful, fun, and way, way more effective. So what we've done here is we've connected with the truth of suffering. We really do suffer. And we've seen that the cause of this suffering is conditioning, and it's responding to that conditioning in grasping and avoiding ways. We react to these voices by trying harder or trying to get away from those voices. We push them away, or we believe them and they make us try even harder. And that is what keeps us on this cyclic wheel of suffering, this cycle of samsara. Then there's the truth that there is an end to suffering. And we want to notice that we experienced that when we walk through this path of turning towards ourselves with affection, we actually feel the dawning of compassion and love, and we feel the dissipation of the conditioning of those voices. The voices lose their power because we've changed our focus. And this is the truth of the path to end suffering. So I'd like to give some credit for some of the places where this material came from. Mostly this has come through my own experience with healing, and I'd first like to give credit to all the voices that have harassed me, that have been demons in my life, because they have woken me up to this experience of suffering that we all have. and have woken me up to this person that I am, that I care about so much, and the feelings of warmth and love that are possible and that come directly from my own true nature. So the voices have been a really powerful gift. I also want to give credit to the Three Doors Academy, which is a program in Virginia that I attended. It was a 3-year program that really helped me to gain much more experience in the refuge that is my true nature, and to really develop that relationship with my own true nature, to see it very clearly through lots of meditation practice. I also want to give credit to the work of Byron Katie, who really has influenced my process of working with these voices, and to the Zen teacher Sherry Huber, who helped me to see that these voices are not part of who I am, that they are outside of me, that they are conditioning, and how to help quiet them. And then finally, I want to give credit to this true nature, because I can say it's my true nature, but it's actually the true nature of all of us, and it's what connects all of us. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this presentation.